Welcome back, Greg Soulje. How are you today?
I'm well, Sarah. How about yourself there?
Doing great for a Friday, and I think we're seeing a little bit of drying out, maybe a little
Yeah.
warming in temperatures. I'm hoping you're going to give us some good news, but I'm kind of doubting you will
Well,
on that front.
in the shorter range of it, things are quieting down. No big rampaging severe weather outbreaks. Although there are parts of the southern Midwest and the mid South that had some hail-producing thunderstorms. They were scattered, and we didn't have any big rains associated with them. But any rain is sort of a demoralizing effect, and still some of these eastern and southern Corn Belt areas that are still trying to drain out. Record crest at a place called Tell City, Indiana. The past 24 hours, that's a little bit east of about Owensboro, Kentucky, highest water they've seen there since the late 1990s. So that issue continues on the lower Mississippi Valley. But yeah, back and forth on temperatures, a generally medium range forecast that is drier, not completely. And we'll go from there.
Very good. All right, let's put up your slides and have you take it away.
All right, and a happy Friday to one and all. And there is the factoid there on Tell City, Indiana, highest since March of 1997. We've seen kind of a slew of crests along the Ohio, lower Wabash, into the Mississippi that are somewhere in that top two, top three since sometime in the late 1990s, 97, 98 in the Ohio River system in particular. Almost 12 feet above average at Petersburg, Indiana, over the stats in the southwestern edge of the state, right near the Ohio, where the White River and the Ohio come together there. So again, some of those lowland ag areas through Kentucky and the lower Mississippi Valley Delta region still dealing with the runoff there. Otherwise, more cool weather for the northern and eastern Corn Belt locales. We'll get a couple of days of warmth, a couple of days of cold, and then we're just this back and forth pattern here in the coming days. And there's kind of a snapshot of the Ohio River Valley flooding still going on for the next 5 days. It's forecast over the Wabash, parts of the mid and lower Ohio, and areas south of about the I-70 corridor into southeast Illinois. So that's the issue there. Meanwhile, I had a little snow on the ground this morning in parts of Michigan, still in northern Wisconsin. You can see those deep shades of purple and blue over southeastern Canada, Hudson Bay, James Bay, north of the St. Lawrence. Yesterday morning, they had readings down near zero, and that's cold for those folks in almost mid-April in southeastern Canada. And again, these cold highs like to migrate over cold grounds or snow-covered areas. So we continue to put down snow. We continue to build the cold in the areas of the northern Great Lakes region and southeastern Canada. And from a long-range weather standpoint, that just sets off a whole bunch of bells and whistles in your head as it applies to the eastern Corn Belt with time. On the plains, big range of temperatures, 65 the Red River Valley of the North, 80 into parts of the High Plains areas. But again, another round of increasing south wind, low afternoon humidity, the worst of the dryness and drought still holding on there. We've had improvement on Thursday's drought monitor in the eastern and southern Corn Belt, and we'll take a look at that in just a second. So some elevated fire concerns into parts of the Plain States for today there across the Dakotas into the Nebraska Panhandle, and then tomorrow shifts southward with even a critical fire day where they've had hardly any moisture. It's really such a dividing line. Wichita, Oklahoma City, east, much better. Wichita, Oklahoma City, and west, still a world of hurt, even with some recent moisture down that particular part of the winter wheat belt. So you know the range of winter wheat conditions there in pasture lands on through parts of the central and southern plains. In the southern states, there's rain in Virginia and the Carolinas and northward. That is drought relief for those folks, but some of the shower activity is still aggravating the wet soils and through parts of Arkansas, Kentucky, and Tennessee. And that's the flooding perspective the next 5 days as it applies to the lower Mississippi Valley locales, the Missouri Boot Hill areas east of Little Rock towards the Mississippi, from about north of Jackson, Mississippi to the Mississippi River on southward. So we've got another 5 days worth of this, and probably they'll need to go out and inspect some of those fields and see what has to be worked back over again or replanting or what have you in some of those southern lowland ag areas either side of the Mississippi. Western states, again, another trip off from, when you're doing long range weather forecasting, where's the cold air source and where is it locking into? Where is the hot ridge, the heat ridge? The guys, the commodity guys, when we used to talk to them on the floor back in the day, used to ask, where's that 588 high or 594 high? That's just the number of basically height of the atmosphere at a certain particular wind level. And that was always an automatic to where the heat is beginning to materialize and where it's going to intensify. For now, it's been in the southwest, Arizona, Phoenix, up around 100, first time this season. They've had the century mark weather, and they'll have more of that here in the coming days. There is the drought monitor, by the way, big improvement in the eastern Corn Belt locales, Wisconsin, Michigan, more so North Illinois, north of the Kankakee, and you get roughly about east of I-57 towards the Wabash. Still some work to do, but over 3.5 inches of rain at Danville, Illinois. That's one of the more wetter locations that we've seen in some of those drier areas of central Illinois. So good news there. You can see the improvement through Missouri, obviously the Ohio Valley back in through the Buckeye State. Still the Black Hills back up to Bismarck. A lot of those ranch and cattle areas through Nebraska, Kansas, and points southwest from there in a world of hurt with the epicenter of the drought in the southwestern states and western Texas. Although the whole number, the percentage of the country has come down, I believe it's like 32.8% of the country, still in the midst of abnormally dry, moderate drought, or categorical higher drought levels on that perspective. And on the weather maps and charts, not a lot going on here. High pressure across the northern and western Corn Belt. You can see that mid-Atlantic rain system, kind of a weak boundary in front across the Pacific Northwest. So once that high, and probably another round later on tonight and tomorrow morning, there are those highs over Michigan, eastern and central Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. Probably down tomorrow morning in some of those spots, probably down, into the lower 30s. We're forecasting some lower 30s in some of our radio station groups in Champaign and Danville. So another round of frost scraping there. Earlier in the week, they were down into the low to mid 20s. So you just continue to lose soil moisture, soil warmth, I should say. The folks at the Illinois State Water Survey are kind enough to put out a daily update on 4-inch soil temperatures out of Illinois. Haven't seen anything past about 44, 45 degrees on an average 4-inch level. You're not going to get anything going in the warm summer crop category with those kind of cool soils. Although we get some warmth going here. This is the Saturday afternoon and evening weather map. You can see the south winds over the western Corn Belt, a little moisture up through Wisconsin, no big deal. A little more organized rain. That's good news for Montana and the western Dakotas. Then come Sunday, that system and its south wind is into much of this eastern and southern plains, much of the Corn Belt, and hence temperatures will come up. And that'll be a good day's worth of drying and evaporation where we've been sort of marginally wet out there. And I would be surprised that some of the folks get a little more progress in the corn and soybean side of things with time before the eastern areas do. I believe it is about 15 to 20% of the oats are in the ground, by the way. That would include Iowa, Nebraska, and South Dakota. So they're making some headway there. Meanwhile, here's the precip over the next couple of days, 48 hours, mid-Atlantic region, Scotia into the upper Midwest, and some 1/4 to local 3/4 inch moisture. They'll take that in the drought areas of Montana and the western Dakotas. So going forward, again, the rain for the rest of the workday today is in through the mid-Atlantic region. 28 to 32 for about 1 to 3 hours. That may nip some stuff into parts of central Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. We're still not removed from frost potential, and it's getting a little bit late in the season for this. Even into the central Corn Belt locales, we'll get 2 cracks at it probably next week as well. Again, not much opportunity to get a rally going on getting some warmth into these soils. Matter of fact, here is the Saturday overnight lows. Those are low to mid 30s at eastern Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, but you can see 40s and 50s back west of the Missouri. Then Sunday's highs come back into the upper 60s and 70s, even a few low to mid 80s over the southern plains. So a quick recovery on temperature. But then we get into Monday, you can see another pooling of some of those shades of green. That's highs in the upper 40s and 50s. So these big temperature swings on these cold fronts that come on through, they don't generate and will not generate a lot of moisture. So that's one good thing about them. But again, drop off in temperatures, and probably where skies clear, winds drop back. We're still looking at some areas of frost and debris flight freeze probably through late next week. And there are the forecast highs back into the eastern Corn Belt. By Tuesday, we are out of the 60s and 70s and back into the 40s and 50s in areas east of the Mississippi. But you do see some warmth getting going back west of the divide into the western states. So we'll just continue to bring down these lobes of cool and cold air as the Sorcerer region remains dominant through the Canadian prairie with snow on the ground. steering currents Monday to Friday for the coming week. You can see mainly a pretty dominant ribbon of air out of Canada, little buckles, little U-shaped configurations, those troughs, if you will. One over the northern plains on Monday. It shifts into the Corn Belt Tuesday, eastern states Wednesday. Another one comes in out of the Canadian Prairie Thursday to Friday. So, and that's a pretty good shot of cold air in behind it. And so that's the story. We just continue with these systems. They're fast moving. Gulf moisture is cut off. But again, if you're thinking you're going to get something in the ground, if you're ready to go, there's probably not going to be much opportunity for significant germination. And if you get up above the ground, you still got to deal with some frost here for the next 2.5 or 3 weeks, at least potential for that. Little system into California has no consequence in the moisture department. And there's, again, fast-moving system Monday, winding up with the pressure lines, the isobars Tuesday, so a healthy wind, a drop in temperatures, frost and freeze all the way past the Ohio Wednesday. As we say, rinse and repeat, another boundary, another run of south wind, couple of spotty showers, another chunk of cold air comes in between late Thursday and Friday into the Easter holiday weekend, into the Corn Belt in particular. There is the 2-week outlook from the feds and kind of a snapshot of how things will really play out. You get these warm bubbles of high pressure that build on in, and they sit there over the western parts of the Corn Belt, mostly into the plains and southwestern states. You get these lobes of cool air into the northern states, northern and New England states. And then with time, while it is at least a trend, Sarah, towards more normal precept, beginning to see signs as we kind of run systems over the top of that hot ridge. You drop them to the south and southeast. This is where my radio pals would bust in and start playing Johnny Cash's Ring of Fire. It's just that the fires, the heat over the southwest, systems come over the top of the ridge. And that's the thinking right there to generate, and winds kind of converge or pile up, collide with each other over the northern and eastern Corn Belt. And that's the way we're going to generate rainfall this springtime season and much of the summer, again, favoring the eastern Corn Belt locales. So there'll be better progress west, delays, and maybe some even additional replanting east. We're kind of more, what do we put, bearish in the east and bullish in the west. But those same western areas are likely to see probably worsening drought conditions and an expansion of it after some modest improvement here over the past couple of weeks. So each time, we get together, we see these little ingredients that are positioned where they need to be to get the medium and the longer range to begin to play out as it ought to be. So pick your spots accordingly. We'll get better numbers, I think, with time in Iowa and the Western Corn Belt, and probably more in the way of delays and limited opportunities or cold soils or what have you in the Eastern Corn Belt. And folks of the plains are going to just have to do the best they can with supplies and pasture lands and all that, winter wheat, as we get deeper into spring and summertime.
Yeah, right now, let's just get that flooding down, because that's still pretty significant.
Yes, yeah, and any just nominal, the average rains. We go back and take a look at the historic data for the past, on average, 30 years, and try to track out, well, what would be, we talk about normal temperatures, highs and lows. There's a way you can kind of calculate normal rainfall for a given week or time frame. And typically through the Midwest, much of the Corn Belt, from northwest to southeast, Twin Cities to Omaha to Indianapolis to Louisville and to Columbus, in that main corridor, typically it's anywhere between a half to 3/4 on the lesser side. If you were to venture towards the Mississippi, and generally speaking, 3/4 to an inch is the normal amount of rain for springtime and early summer in the heart of the Corn Belt. So if you're wet and you're coming up with normal rains, you still got some issues to deal with, and you just hope to pray you don't have anything heavier than that. So that's, again, kind of the basis that we're going to continue to go with here, the Weather Office, with the upcoming planting season for the Corn Belt. And there'll be more stories on the dryness and drought in the Plain States and our livestock friends out there.
Yeah, I think it was University of Nebraska is already putting out how to deal with the drought press releases here this week. So there is, I think, some thinking along that line anyway, at least some preparation, and that's always good as well.
That's always good news, yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be quite a dichotomy, a range of I think, conditions this year throughout the Corn Belt, the plains, the heartland, however you want to label it. And that's not even taking into account what's going to happen come hurricane season and all that. Way too early to start thinking about that. But La Nina, by the way, officially over and done with. We're out of it. We're into kind of a neutral stage, and it's not like flipping a switch where we go immediately into El Nino, but there's some thinking and talk that, and even in our longer range, a little slower to evolve, but that may be something that develops as we get deeper into spring and summer across the country.
Very good. Greg's longer forecast on This Week in Agribusiness here this weekend, RFD TV and 120 other affiliated stations. Of course, we'll be checking in with Greg again next week, Tuesday, Friday, and bringing you updates and the latest weather information. So, Greg, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you, and have a great weekend, Sarah.
You too, and thank you all for tuning in as well.